Attended exchange is rare, but you might have heard the phrase being used. So what is it, and could you take advantage of it? I'll explain after this short intro. I'm Tim Hill, internet entrepreneur, property investor, and author of How to Really Buy a Property. No, it's not one of those books that goes on and on about how you can make millions investing in property, and all you have to do is go on my course to learn the secrets, and then you go on my course and you find out that you have to go on my master course to learn the real secrets. None of that. If you have decided to buy a property, no matter what your motivation, then How to Really Buy a Property is the smart way to do it, and it will save you time, money, and stress. All right, let's just get the terminology straight. First of all, you've got exchange. What is exchange? So when you're buying a property, the core document at the centre of it is called the contract. And in the contract, it's a very short document. It's got who you are, the buyer, who the vendor, who the seller is, how much you're going to buy the property for, what the property actually is, its address, and when the deal is actually going to happen, when you're going to make the payment and be able to move into the property. Normally, it takes a while to get to the point when this can all be fully agreed. For example, you might be getting a survey done, you might be getting some checks done with a local authority to find out if there's any kind of weird plan permission going on, or any weird plan permission that's just been granted in the area, which may make you think again about buying, or may make you think again about the value of property. Until all the paperwork is drawn together, and this can take weeks, it really does depend. There are so many different parties involved in it. Especially, say, if you're buying a flat compared to a freehold house, lots of people need to provide paperwork. If that's the case, it can take several weeks. So until all that paperwork is gathered together, you can't actually finally sign that contract and say, yep, I'm going through with this. Until you're fully aware of what you're buying and what's going to be happening in the area. If you're getting a mortgage, you don't have any choice in this. The mortgage company is going to want to see lots and lots of different documents from lots of different parties. When all those documents are together, you sign a contract. The seller signs a contract. It's the same contract, but just different documents. And then your solicitors will exchange those contracts. So you, the buyer, now have a copy of the contract from the vendor saying, yep, I'm definitely selling at this price, signed, and we're going to do that sale on X date. Usually it's about 7 days in the future, that date, but it can vary completely. It can even be on the same day at the same time. Something known as simultaneous exchange and completion. It's quite rare, but it does happen. Okay, so that's the exchange. When the two contracts have exchanged between the party. So what's attended exchange? Well, you might not be getting a mortgage on the property. The seller might have gathered together all of the documentation that he thinks you'll need in advance of putting the property on the market. Or maybe the sale has just fallen through. All the documentation's there, but the buyer had to walk away for some reason. Perhaps they couldn't raise the funds, whatever. So all the paperwork is just sitting there. Now, what you could do is have the vendor solicitor sends the papers to your solicitor looks at them, says, oh, I've got some questions, and then he sends those questions back to the vendor solicitor. The vendor solicitor asks the vendor what the answers are. He might have to go to someone like the freeholder or the managing agent to get answers. And even though all the paperwork is there, things start to drag and take a lot of time. But what if you could get at least the solicitors, and preferably you, the buyer, and the vendor, all together in one room at the same time? Then you could just hammer things out really quickly. And if there were any questions, there's a good chance that the vendor might know the answer to the questions. So then if that's the case, your solicitor says, I just need to know the answer to 2 or 3 questions. The vendor goes, here's the answer, and I sign to declare that to the best of my knowledge, these are true answers. Then everything's done. What you've done is you've got everybody to attend the same place, to come to the same place. And because you've done that, and all the questions have been answered really quickly, those contracts that we talked about earlier can be exchanged right there and then. So, you could offer on a property on Monday. You could arrange for your solicitor and their solicitor, and hopefully them and you, to all be in the same room on a Wednesday, and you could exchange on a Wednesday within 48 hours. I've known people to exchange within 24 hours. It really, if you don't have a mortgage company involved, then it really can be that quick. If you've got the mortgage company involved, then they're going to want to see all these papers that your solicitor has gathered together or the vendor solicitor supplied. They're going to want to think about you and, are you a good bet? What's your job? How much are you earning? What are your loans? They want to see proof of all these things. That's going to take time to work through. Once the mortgage offer's out, you could move to a tendered exchange then. But a tendered exchange is usually for your kind of cash buyer, doesn't need a loan, has done his homework, just gets his solicitor there, says, hey, my solicitor, is there anything concerning here in the documents? And the solicitor can just, look through and say, no, this is a standard flat, or this is your average house in that street. So let's exchange. And it can really happen that fast. Now, if you're all in that one room and there are a couple of things that your solicitor's not quite happy about, and the vendor can't provide an answer straight away, and the vendor solicitor can't be sure, then you can do what's called a conditional exchange, which just means that you're exchanging those contracts, but subject to those couple of checks being answered in a certain way. So you might just want to make sure that there's no, buying a flat, say, and you want to make sure there are no major building works planned that could give you a huge bill in the future. So you just want that clarity from the managing agents who run the building on behalf of the freeholder. And you agree with the vendor that if there are costs coming up next year that are more than, say, £5,000 worth of costs, that he will pay half and you will pay half. So then that goes into the contract, and that becomes a condition of the contract that before completion can happen, before you'll pay the rest of the money for the property, the vendor or his solicitor has to come back with that answer. So a tendered exchange, usually for cash buyers, usually for perhaps your property investors. But if you're a cash buyer, and certain documents are ready already, say, such as the managing agent's accounts if you're buying a leasehold, or if it's just a standard freehold house, you can, for example, just go straight online most of the time to check if there's any weird planning permission, coming up in that area, or any of your neighbours have got planning permission that you didn't know about that's going to make you uncomfortable buying that house. You can do that very, very quickly, and then you can just move to a tendered exchange. Of course, it is a little bit more expensive because you're paying your solicitor to travel to some location, and perhaps the vendor's solicitor to travel to some location if they haven't agreed to meet in one of the other offices. So there is that extra cost. But for most professional buyers, it's better to get a deal through quickly than it is to wait around while documents are gathered, because that's the time that all sorts of things can go wrong, that the vendor decides they're not going to sell anymore because suddenly discovered that they've got a job promotion, they want to keep the house and improve it or something. So many reasons to get a deal through quickly. We always call it in the industry time costs deals. The more time there is, the more likely it is the deal won't happen. But that's the basic outline behind a tendered exchange. That's all for this short video. There's much more information in the book, How to Really Buy a Property. As always, if you found this information useful, please remember to subscribe, to share, to like, to do all those social media things. It all helps other people who need this information find it more easily. If you've got some specific questions which you'd like me to have a go at answering, please put them in the comments below and I'll try and get to them. And in the meantime, good luck with your property purchase.